Have you ever wondered why just one person walking into a room without saying a word, without doing anything, can instantly cause the most arrogant, self-important person in the crowd to lose their confidence, become visibly unsettled as if their entire world just flipped upside down? Today, I'm going to reveal a shocking truth, one that not only uncovers the hidden power within each of us, but will also completely transform the way you view people and the relationships around you. The super empath, highly sensitive yet stronger than anyone could ever imagine, can shatter a narcissist's ego without lifting a finger, without saying a single word, and without any visible effort. This isn't magic, it's not a joke, and it's certainly not some Hollywood movie script. This is real, backed by psychology, by emotional science, and by the way our brains and hearts operate every single day. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now, because we're about to go on a journey that's deep, powerful, and inspiring, and I promise you won't want to miss a single moment of it. We're going to explore a massive question, one so profound it may stop you in your tracks. Why is it that the super empath can make the narcissist, someone who believes they're untouchable, tremble with fear without even trying? I'm going to take you step by step from understanding who the super empath really is and the invisible power they carry, to breaking down why a narcissist's ego is as fragile as glass in their presence, to diving deep into the shocking reasons behind it all, and finally, what happens when that ego completely collapses. This isn't just analysis. It's a call for you to look within, to recognize the power you already hold, and to start living a life more authentic than ever before. I'll use science to illuminate, offer insights that resonate, and tie it all back to simple yet powerful truths that every single one of us can apply. So, take a deep breath, get ready, and let's begin right now. Let's start with the super empath. Who are these individuals and why do they possess such invisible power? Super empaths aren't supernatural beings or people with magical abilities. They're ordinary individuals, like you, like me, but they've walked paths that not everyone dares to face. They've been hurt. Life has tested them. They've stood before pain so intense it seemed impossible to overcome. And yet, they didn't break. Instead, they chose to rise, to understand themselves deeply, and to turn their sensitivity into a strength that no one can take away. They're not weak. They are silent warriors armed with razor-sharp intuition, unshakable inner confidence, and a rare ability. They don't let other people's emotions drag them down. Science has a very clear view of people like this. Dr. Elaine Aron, a leading researcher in the US, found that about 20% of the population are highly sensitive persons, or HSPs. These individuals experience everything more deeply. They hear the quiet sounds others miss, pick up on the emotions others try to hide, and notice subtle details that most people overlook. But a super empath doesn't stop at being naturally sensitive. They've been forged through life's harshest trials and emerged on a higher level, something renowned psychologist Daniel Goleman refers to as emotional intelligence, or EQ. EQ isn't just about understanding emotions. It's about using that understanding to live a meaningful life, to remain grounded through other people's storms without being swept away. Super empaths have developed their EQ to an extraordinary level, not because they were born with it, but because they chose to face their pain, to learn from it, and to transform it into power. So, what makes their power invisible yet so potent? It's the way they show up in life, not loud, not flashy, but undeniably powerful. They don't seek conflict, they don't crave attention, and they don't feel the need to prove themselves to anyone. They simply are, authentic, calm, and unshakable, and that alone is enough to make people stop and take notice. Picture yourself in a room full of tension, people yelling, judging, trying to control one another. Then someone walks in. They don't say a word, don't do anything, yet they carry an aura of peace so strong it shifts the energy in the room. You feel it. You sense that they're not caught up in the drama, and it makes you wonder, why can't you be like that? To a narcissist, that feeling isn't just curiosity. It's a direct threat to their ego. Why is this power dangerous to a narcissist? Because the super empath breaks every rule the narcissist depends on to survive. Narcissists feed on fear, attention, and validation. They need it to feel important. But the super empath gives them none of it. They're not intimidated by threats. They don't get pulled into mind games, and they don't need external approval to feel worthy. They stand there, radiating quiet confidence, and it delivers a silent message. I see you, I know exactly what you're doing, and I don't care what you think of me. To the narcissist, this isn't just uncomfortable, it's a direct blow to the foundation of the identity they've spent their entire lives building. Science can explain part of this dynamic. In our brains, we have something called mirror neurons. These are cells that reflect the emotions of those around us. That's why you feel happy around joyful people and tense near angry ones. But super empaths operate differently. They don't mirror negative energy. Instead, they hold steady in their own emotional state. They stay calm, grounded, and sincere, forcing others to confront their own emotions without a place to offload them. For a regular person, this could be a moment of self-reflection and growth. But for a narcissist, someone who has spent their whole life running from truth, this is unbearable. The presence of a super empath doesn't just unsettle them, it exposes them, strips away their mask, and that's the one thing they fear most. But to truly understand why this happens, we need to take a deeper look into the narcissist, how their ego is built, and why it's so fragile to begin with. Now let's turn to the other side, the narcissist. Who are they, and why is their ego so fragile that it can collapse in the presence of a super empath? Narcissists aren't purely evil villains or one-dimensional antagonists like you might see in movies. They're human, but humans with an ego so inflated it hides deeply rooted emotional wounds. In the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual used by mental health professionals in the US, narcissistic personality disorder is clearly outlined. These are individuals who have an intense need for admiration, a deep fear of criticism, and often exaggerate their self-worth just to feel secure. They build a flawless image of themselves, an idealized version. But it's not real. It's a mask, a polished exterior designed to cover the cracks, the fears, and the emptiness they dare not face. Think of the narcissist as someone who constantly needs an audience to feel alive. They boast about their accomplishments, spin stories that make them look amazing, and can be incredibly charming, but all of it serves one purpose: to keep their ego intact. They need your attention, your admiration, even your fear, because without it, they don't know who they are. Their ego isn't a fortress, it's a sandcastle, beautiful, but easily washed away without constant reinforcement. And that's not strength, it's weakness, disguised with confidence and charm. They depend on external validation to survive. Without it, they spiral, confused, panicked, and hollow. What's the narcissist's greatest fear? It's not being yelled at or even publicly criticized, it's being seen. It's someone looking past the facade and recognizing the truth they've tried so hard to bury. Behind their confidence lies deep insecurity. Behind their arrogance is the fear of not being good enough. Behind their control is emotional chaos, and they've spent their entire lives running from that truth, building a false identity to protect themselves, using manipulation to keep others in line, and hiding behind superiority to mask their fear. But then the super empath shows up, and everything begins to unravel. The super empath doesn't have to say anything, doesn't have to do anything. Their calm, honest, and unshakable presence is enough to make the narcissist feel exposed, not because the super empath tries to, but because they refuse to play along with the act. They don't validate the lie. They don't get pulled into the performance. The typical tactics of the narcissist, blame shifting, yelling, emotional manipulation, fail when used against a super empath. Why? Because the super empath doesn't react the way the narcissist expects. They don't argue. They don't get scared. They don't engage in drama. The narcissist needs an opponent to fight, an audience to perform for, a victim to control. But the super empath doesn't offer them any of those roles. They just stand there, steady, grounded, uninvolved, and it throws everything off balance. This isn't the power of aggression, this is the power of refusal, the refusal to play a game they know is fake. The narcissist's ego isn't nearly as strong as they want you to believe. It's so fragile that the mere presence of someone who won't clap, won't be afraid, won't give them attention, causes it to start cracking. They need attention to feel real, fear to feel powerful, recognition to feel worthy. But the super empath gives them none of it. The presence of a super empath is a silent reminder. You can't control me. You can't manipulate me. And I don't need you to know who I am. To the narcissist, this isn't just a loss, it's a crisis. Their carefully built ego begins to fracture, not because the super empath attacked, but because the super empath refused to play their role in the narcissist script. And that right there leads us into the shocking truth, the most important part of this message, where everything finally comes into focus. Now we come to the heart of the story. Why does the super empath destroy the narcissist's ego without even trying? This is the real shocking reason, a truth that's not only astonishing, but also a call for you to look inward and recognize the power you already hold. I'm going to break it down piece by piece, layer by layer, so you can see the full picture. And I promise, once you understand this, you'll never see the people around you the same way again. First, the very presence of a super empath is a major problem for the narcissist, one they can't control, avoid, or ignore. The super empath doesn't have to say anything or do anything. They simply stand there with calm and sincerity, and that alone is enough to make the narcissist feel uncomfortable, even threatened. Science has a term for this: emotional contagion, the idea that emotions can spread from person to person. When you're around someone who's joyful, you tend to feel happy. When you're near someone angry, you can feel tense. But here's the miracle of the super empath. They don't absorb negative energy from others. They remain grounded in their own emotional state, calm, confident, unmoved, and that forces the person in front of them to sit with their own emotions, with nowhere to project them. Here's a deep truth. Most people mirror others to feel connected, to avoid conflict, to fit in. But the super empath doesn't do that. They don't mirror anger. They don't mirror manipulation. They don't mirror false charm. They simply stand there in their authentic truth, and that creates a silence the narcissist can't fill. Narcissists need people to engage in their drama, to fear or admire them in order to feel secure. But the super empath doesn't give them that chance. Their presence is a silent declaration: I don't need to play your game, and I don't need you to know who I am. To the narcissist, this isn't just annoying, it's a direct assault on their ego. It makes them feel out of control, disoriented, stripped of the very things they rely on to survive. Second, the super empath becomes a mirror, but not the kind the narcissist wants to look into. They reflect the truth the narcissist has spent their entire life avoiding: their insecurity, their fear, their phoniness. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in human psychology, spoke about the shadow self, the hidden parts of ourselves we often reject. For most people, being confronted with this shadow is a chance to grow, to change, to evolve. But the narcissist doesn't want that opportunity. They don't want to grow. They want to escape. They create a false self to protect their wounds, use arrogance to mask fear, and manipulate to keep control. But the super empath blocks the escape route. Their truth, their way of living and being, is a constant, silent reminder that the false self cannot survive forever. Here's a profound realization. Most people wear masks. Masks to please others, to hide fear, to feel important. But the super empath wears none. They don't fake it. They don't flatter. They don't say what others want to hear just to keep the peace. They are unapologetically themselves, honest, grounded, unbothered by what others think. To the average person, that might be a challenge, but to the narcissist, it's a full-blown existential crisis. They cannot handle the truth the super empath reflects, not because the truth is cruel, but because they lack the courage to face it. The super empath isn't trying to hurt anyone, they're just living authentically. And for the narcissist, that alone is enough to cause their ego to crack, to tremble, and ultimately to collapse. Third, the narcissist becomes powerless in front of the super empath, and this is the key point of the entire story. All the narcissist's weapons, manipulation, blame, pressure, yelling, become useless when the other person doesn't react, doesn't flinch, doesn't play along. Think about this. The narcissist's power doesn't come from within. It comes from their ability to control others. They need your fear to feel powerful. They need your resistance to feel significant. They need your obedience to feel worthy. But the super empath gives them none of that. No fear, no argument, no compliance. They just stand there with quiet confidence and let the narcissist face themselves. This is a powerful truth. We often think power comes from fighting, from winning, from proving ourselves. But the super empath shows us a different kind of power. The power of refusal, the power of stillness, the power of not needing anyone to validate your worth. The narcissist doesn't know what to do when faced with this kind of power because they can't control it, can't manipulate it, can't conquer it. And when you can't control someone, you lose your grip on power altogether. For the narcissist, that's the worst thing imaginable. They need an audience, they need an opponent, they need a victim. But the super empath doesn't fill any of those roles. They simply exist as themselves. And that alone is enough to leave the narcissist powerless, panicked, and ultimately self-destructing. But this isn't a story about the super empath winning or the narcissist losing in the traditional sense. The super empath doesn't set out to destroy anyone. They're not seeking drama. They don't want to hurt people. They don't need to prove anything to the world. They simply live in truth. Strong, sincere, unmanipulatable, and that unintentionally becomes the most powerful weapon against a narcissist. And here's the shocking truth. It's not that the super empath is so powerful, it's that the narcissist is so weak without people to uphold their false self. They need attention, they need fear, they need validation to survive. But the super empath gives them nothing. They just stand there, with no effort, no fight, and the narcissist collapses under the weight of their own emptiness. That is the invisible power of the super empath. And that is what we must understand more deeply as we look into what comes next. So what happens when the narcissist's ego starts to shake, starts to crack, starts to collapse in the presence of the super empath? They don't sit still and accept it. That's not who they are. When confronted with this invisible power, the narcissist usually reacts in three main ways, and each one reveals more about their weakness and the strength of the super empath. I'm going to break them down one by one so you can see this isn't just a psychological story, it's a life lesson about people, about human nature, and about yourself. First, the narcissist may go into a rage, and I mean quite literally. When their ego is threatened, when they feel they're losing control, they will do anything to regain a sense of power. They shout, they criticize, they increase the pressure, all in an effort to make you react, to pull you into their drama, to turn you into the audience or the victim they need. But here's the incredible part. The super empath doesn't waver. They don't argue, don't get scared, don't get pulled in. They stand there, calm and composed, and let the narcissist exhaust themselves. Here's a deep truth. The narcissist's anger is not power, it's desperation. They yell not because they are strong, but because they are afraid. Afraid that if no one reacts, if no one pays attention, they will cease to exist. The super empath understands this, not through theory, but through instinct. And they don't give the narcissist what they want. The result? The narcissist burns out, fails, and reveals their own weakness in front of everyone. Second, the narcissist may run away, and this happens more often than you might think. When they realize they can't manipulate the super empath, when they can't regain control, many narcissists choose to disappear. They avoid, they withdraw, they try to escape a situation they cannot win. But this isn't a strategy, it's surrender. Here's a powerful truth. When you run from the truth, you're not protecting your ego, you're only delaying its collapse. The super empath doesn't chase, doesn't attack, doesn't have to do anything at all. They simply keep living their life, and that alone makes the narcissist feel like they've lost their place. They don't run because the super empath is frightening. They run because they don't have the courage to face themselves without someone holding up their illusion. Third, the narcissist may try to smear the super empath, and this is a tactic they often turn to when everything else fails. They spread rumors, they gossip, they try to damage the super empath's reputation. Anything to feel like they still matter, like they still have influence. But here's the remarkable part. The super empath doesn't care. They don't need to defend their name, don't need to prove themselves, don't need to fight back against the lies. They live in truth, and that truth is stronger than any smear. Here's another deep truth. When you know who you are, when you don't need anyone else to validate your worth, no amount of slander can touch you. The narcissist may try, but they fail. Not because the super empath fights them, but because the super empath doesn't have to. Truth speaks for itself, and time always stands with those who live authentically. Meanwhile, the super empath remains composed, and that's what makes them exceptional. They don't need revenge, don't need to prove anything, don't need to engage in battles to defend themselves. They trust that truth will come out, that time will do its job, and that they don't need anyone's approval to know their own value. There's a quote from A Course in Miracles that I want you to remember. Those who are certain of the outcome can wait and wait without anxiety. The super empath lives that way. They're not rushed, not anxious, not caught in the narcissist's chaos. They know who they are, they know their worth, and they don't need confirmation from anyone else. When the narcissist attacks, the super empath doesn't move. They just stand and let the other person wear themselves out, fail, and face themselves. And this is the greatest lesson I want you to carry with you. You don't have to be a super empath to stand up to a narcissist. Anyone can do this if they learn to stop playing the narcissist's game. In psychology, there's a technique called the grey rock method. You stay neutral, don't react, don't give them the attention they crave. When you do that, the narcissist has nothing left to hold on to. They get tired, give up, and fall apart. The super empath does this naturally, without effort. But you and I, we can train ourselves to do the same. You don't need superpowers. You don't need supernatural intuition. You just need to learn to stay grounded, unafraid, and true to yourself. This is the shocking truth once again, and I want you to pause for a moment and feel it. The power to destroy the narcissist's ego doesn't belong only to the super empath. It's within reach for all of us. You don't have to be born highly sensitive. You don't need an exceptionally high EQ. You don't need to go through deep trauma to become a super empath. You just need to do one thing. Stop being afraid, stop following other people's script, and dare to live as your true self. When you do that, the narcissist has nothing to hold on to. They fall apart, not because you attacked, but because you refuse to join in. This isn't just a story about super empaths and narcissists. This is a call for you to realize that you are stronger than you think, that you can stand firm in front of anyone, against anything, simply by being yourself. We've just walked through a long journey, a journey filled with discoveries, insights, and powerful truths. I want to bring it all together so you can clearly see the bigger picture and carry it with you as a source of inspiration for your own life. We uncovered a shocking truth. The super empath destroys the narcissist's ego without even trying, simply by being themselves. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. Just their presence, calm, sincere, and impossible to manipulate, is enough to force the narcissist to face a truth they cannot bear. But this isn't a story about who's stronger or who wins and who loses. This is a story about who has the courage to live in truth. The super empath doesn't seek drama. Drama finds them, and they handle it by not handling it. They stand firm, without fear, without reacting, and allow the narcissist to confront themselves. The narcissist, on the other hand, builds a false identity, one that relies on attention and fear to survive. When the super empath shows up and refuses to play along, that identity loses its anchor. It collapses, not because the super empath attacked it, but because the narcissist doesn't have the strength to keep it standing. Here's a profound realization. Real power isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself. It's about knowing who you are and not needing anyone else to validate it. You don't need superpowers to win in life. You don't have to be a super empath to deal with people like narcissists. You just have to be yourself. Strong, honest, and unwilling to let anyone drag you down. If someone can't handle your truth, if someone can't accept you when you're living authentically, that's their issue, not yours. This is the greatest inspiration I hope you take with you today. You are stronger than you think. You can stand tall in front of anyone, against anything, simply by daring to be yourself. You don't need to fight. You don't need to prove anything. Just live in your truth. And that alone is enough to make any false ego crumble in your presence. I hope this video didn't just offer you a new perspective, but lit a fire in you to believe in yourself. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to chase after anyone. You are enough. And when you live in that truth, no one can shake you. If this message spoke to you, if it made you reflect, if it inspired you even just a little, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. What was the most shocking part for you today? Have you ever felt the power of being unapologetically yourself? I'll be reading every response because I truly believe we all have a story worth hearing. Thank you for spending this time with me. Carry this strength with you, stay true to who you are, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you soon.